Episode 11, Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Hey y'all, I'm Heather, and this is Poisoned Appalachia, the dark side of Appalachia. As always, thank you for listening. Last week's episode, The Bell Witch, that was some pretty scary stuff, huh? So this week, let's take a detour to Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Everyone loves amusement parks, right? The rides, the snacks, the gruesome deaths. What? The amusement parks you've gone to haven't had gruesome deaths? Well, this is Poison Appalachia, and it is spooky month, so we aren't just going to go to a nice, cheerful amusement park. What's the fun in that? We're going to visit Lake Shawnee Amusement Park in Rock, West Virginia. My friend Megan suggested this one. Rock is an unincorporated community in Mercer County, West Virginia. Just a little hole in the road, as they say. Mercer County is in southern West Virginia on the southeastern border of West Virginia where it meets Virginia. Rock is a small rural community nestled between three mountains and along the Bluestone River. Most of the people who lived in Rock in its heyday were either coal miners, railroaders, or in some other way played a supporting role for the coal mines and their employees. Now that the small coal mines have pretty much closed and the bigger mines are in different areas, it's become a very small community. I really couldn't find out a lot about it, but it does have some very gorgeous scenery. And we'll hear a little bit more about the area near the end of this story. So, but for this one, we have to go back in history a bit for the beginning of the story. For those of you who've been with me since the beginning, with Chief Cornstalk's curse, I covered a bit of this. This started because of the Treaty of Fort Stanwix. It was a treaty finalized on October 22nd, 1784, between the United States and Native Americans from 6 nations of the Iroquois League. It was signed at Fort Stanwix in present-day Rome, New York, and was the first of several treaties between Native Americans and the United States after the American victory of the Revolutionary War. Following the Revolutionary War, the British ceded their claims in North America to the American government, against the desire of their Native American allies. As a result, the status of Indian lands, or Native American lands, was ignored in the Treaty of Paris, which was the peace and land settlement between the British and the American colonies. The Iroquois League fled to Canada after the Revolution in order to continue receiving British support. Later, some of the Iroquois returned to their home in the Ohio region. Those that returned often got in violent conflict with colonists trying to settle the area, so the Treaty of Fort Stanwix was intended to serve as a peace treaty between the nations of the Iroquois as well as secure other Native American lands farther west. However, the Native Americans of the Ohio country and in West Virginia had not been consulted in the 1768 treaty. But the white people moved in and started claiming the territory as their own, whether these Native American tribes had agreed to it or not. And so it was that Mitchell Clay and his family moved to the land in Mercer County, which was then Virginia, but now, of course, is West Virginia. Mitchell Clay married in Franklin County, Virginia, in the year 1760 to Phoebe Belcher. In April 1774, there was granted by Dunmore, the royal governor of Virginia, to Mitchell Clay, assignee of Lieutenant John Draper, 800 acres of land on Bluestone Creek, Clover Bottoms, then Fincastle County, Virginia, and Mercer County, Virginia. By the terms of this grant, Clay was required to take possession of the land within 3 years, clear so much per year, and render so much ground rent to the King of Great Britain. So Mitchell and his wife Phoebe moved to the land of Mercer County along with their 16 children. I mean, that was like a whole settlement in and of itself. We're getting in Duggar territory there. One day, once they were settled in, Mitchell was out hunting. He had asked 2 of his sons, Bartley and Ezekiel, to work on some fencing to protect the crops from animals and the house from the local Native Americans that hadn't taken too kindly to the white men settling here. We'll find out more about this one later on, why one of the reasons they weren't happy of it. While Mitchell was off hunting, the natives who had been watching decided to attack. They grabbed Bartley first and killed him. Phoebe and the younger kids quickly hid, but Tabitha, one of the daughters, saw that they were going to scalp Bartley, so she went out and tried to stop it, and they killed and scalped her too. They grabbed Ezekiel and took off with him. Phoebe and the other kids quickly escaped and ran to the nearest neighbor's house, which was about 5 miles away. They made it safely to the home of James Bailey, and when Mitchell returned, he saw the aftermath of the attack and assumed that the whole family had been murdered or kidnapped. So Mitchell headed to the nearest army post and told them what happened. And a group of soldiers went out looking for the natives that attacked the family. Mitchell went with them. The army caught up with the attackers and killed several of them, but they split up, and the group that got away had Ezekiel. For retaliation of the natives' deaths, they burned Ezekiel at the stake. This was to become known as the Clover Bottom Massacre. The natives did allow the return of Mitchell Clay's children's bodies to be buried on the land of his homestead. Mitchell Clay first marked the grave in 1783, and on August 14, 1937, a headstone marker was erected by the Daughters of the American Revolution, marking the location of the graves permanently. Hear the story and visit their grave site and tombstone that still stands there on the property today. After that, life on the homestead was definitely not the same. But I really couldn't find out much about the land until 1926. In 1926, Conley T. Snydow purchased the land and began developing an amusement park for the people of Mercer County, West Virginia. Now, I don't know if this was the same Conley T. Snydow, but I think it is. I mean, it's not that common of a name. But I think he was a big football coach in the area, too. So, he's kind of famous for that and in some of the Hall of Fames around the area. But he wanted to make an amusement park for the people. So the park featured a Ferris wheel and a swing ride, a water slide. It was popular among locals in the county, particularly families of coal miners who resided in the area. It also featured a racetrack, concession stands, dance hall, a speakeasy, and cabins for overnight stays. He also added a pond and a swimming hole complete with canoes. The pond and swimming pools were both man-made, and as they called it, a concrete pond. Snydow's reasonable ticket prices attracted many families, especially the coal mining families. Coal miners would come from miles around for a weekend of fun, and they would bring their families with them. Over 10,000 people came to the park during 4th of July weekends in the 1940s, so it was a pretty big thing back then. But then the people started dying. Honestly, it's very hard to find information about the deaths and the times, but let me give you the best timeline that I could piece together from all the sources that I read. In 1927, a young girl named Emmeline Schrader died when she was struck by a truck while playing on the swing set. I guess the truck was backing out and backed into the area of the swings. As she was swinging around, she hit the back of the truck. One of the documentaries I watched said she was decapitated, which could be a possibility, but I really don't know because that's the only time I heard that or read that. Or I didn't read it. I read another story that it happened in 1966, and that's why the park closed. But I don't think that one's accurate. I tried to look up a little bit more about Emmeline Schrader and really couldn't find much. It is documented that she wore a pink dress. She is one of the more prominent apparitions seen on the property, always wearing her pink dress. Honestly, it could just be a story and never happened, but it's part of the history there, because there's not a lot mentioning it, and you think that if a little girl was killed like that it would be in the newspapers. So who knows? In 1927, Conley Snydow's 3-year-old daughter Eloise was killed at the hotel where they lived there. One day she ran for the elevator to get on it. She grabbed for the floor of the elevator and it pulled her up and crushed her between the doors. Some sources say that was the first death. Some say Emmeline's was, or Emmeline. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. A woman was shot just outside the park in 1934. Once again, I couldn't really find anything else about this, just that she was shot and killed. In 1935, there was a hit and run right outside the park where someone was killed. Also, that's all the information I could find on that. In 1930, a boy named George Wythe was tragically drowned in the park's swimming pool. In 1961, 6-year-old Wayne Harmon died in the pool there. And in 1965, 11-year-old John Tolley got sucked into the drain of the pool and died. His desperate mom searched the entire park trying to find her boy and even went back home to make sure they didn't cross paths on the way. She went back to the park, and after a search, they finally found him in the pool. Before this happened, a woman swimming in the pool said she felt like something was pulling her down into the water. Park bosses at the time then filled the pool with sand to avoid a similar accident. But the park closed in 1967. I read it was because of a failed health inspection, and another one said it was closed because of the deaths. I also heard that Conley Snidow closed it himself because of the deaths. So who knows the real reason? There's really no main story on this, just little bits and pieces everywhere. So if you're doing a report on this, don't go by my information. Haha. No, seriously though, I don't know why nothing matches up on this. There's so many different little stories. So it's really hard to know what's the truth and what's not the truth. But regardless, in 1985, Gaylord White became the new owner of the property. He'd worked at the amusement park when he was a teenager, so he desired to reopen the park. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park welcomed tens of thousands of visitors during its second run, but it just ran for 3 years in the 1980s. White kept the park open, but astronomical insurance costs forced him to close the park. Even after the park was closed, they still did activities there. The White family used the property for various purposes over the past 30 years. The White family opened the abandoned amusement park for campfire stories and tours in the 90s. They've also used the park for catfishing tournaments and mud bogging. His plans prompted an archaeological team from Marshall and Concord College to launch a rescue excavation in 1988. The field teams uncovered more corpses and over 25,000 artifacts. Gaylord White permitted the field teams to conduct a second excavation during the summer of 1989. During the 2 excavations, the field teams discovered 23 to 25 children's corpses. Archaeologists estimate that approximately 3,000 Native American bodies remain in the ground. According to the Register-Herald, the team from Marshall University conducted the dig at the site and determined as many as 3,000 Native Americans were there. A majority of who were confirmed to be children. Gaylord White said that the experts think the rest of the tribe was infected by a virus and left the region. They believe that they left the children behind to prevent them from being infected. Which, I don't understand that. Why would all the children be dead there unless they didn't have anyone to take care of them? Although the property, no, goodness, I can't talk. Although they were unable to disturb the burial site, the White family retained possession of the property. In the 1990s, they started offering tours and a campfire story time during the Halloween season. As the property had been the site of several tragedies, it was rumored to be haunted, of course. It always is. But that only increased interest in the tours. The remaining rides and attractions, which are in clear disrepair, only add to the spooky ambiance. The Register-Herald reports that the site also has been used by filming locations for ABC Family, the Discovery Channel, National Geographic, and the Travel Channel. And there are tons of documentaries on YouTube about it, so if you want to look into it further, definitely check that out. So what about the hauntings? Like everything else, I'm getting a lot of different things from different sources, so we'll just swing it and piece it together as best as we can. Many people report interactions with a little girl who died on the swings. Because the White family acquired the original swing set when they reopened the park in the 1980s, it seems possible, likely even, that the girl's spirit might spend some time in the spot where she took her final breath. So that's a cool little story I read. They were trying to find a swing for the park to open it kind of like the old park. And they searched around, found a swing kind of like that, they thought, in New Jersey. They brought it there, and whenever they matched up the serial numbers, it was actually that swing set. So it returned back to its home. But with this, it says, on a still day, there's an owl that seems to dance in the breeze, like an owl toy. And only it can feel when not even the leaves in the trees above seem to move. Curiously, the owl will often stop in its tracks, falling limp as if someone hit a switch, or as if a little child dropped it as she moved on to other toys. I also saw in the documentary where people leave toys for the little girl to play with. And there's like all kinds of toys there, so that was kind of cool. Sometimes people see a little girl in a pink dress with a man in a suit. Other times people have seen a little girl in a white bloodstained dress. I don't know if this is the same girl or different girls. Other witnesses have seen her ghost wandering aimlessly around near the empty pool. Some investigators claim to have heard the faint sound of children's laughter echoing through the abandoned rides, only for it to fade into an eerie silence. George White's tragic drowning in the pool has also left its mark on the park's supernatural reputation. He was the one that died in the 30s in a pool. Numerous reports have described a sensation of being watched, especially near the pool area. Some have even claimed to see ripples in the accumulated rainwater, as if an invisible presence is moving beneath the surface. The disembodied cries of a young boy have been reported, leading many to believe that George's spirit still lingers, unable to find peace. There's supposed to be a spirit that is seen in the Ferris wheel. It's an adult man. Pictures have been taken with mist in one of the cars, and people claim to have seen him. Now, I don't know if that's the same man that was with the little girl earlier that people see, or if this is a different apparition. And from the deaths that I read, I don't even think a man died there, so I'm not sure who he is. Up front by where the concession stand is, a little boy ghost hangs out in that area, and some have been able to communicate with him with a pinwheel that moves when no wind is blowing. I actually saw this on a video. They'll like ask it questions and it'll move a certain way or move the opposite way. So that's how they communicate with it. People also hear chanting and have seen Native American apparitions on the ground. I also found these experiences on a website. So I didn't find anything else anywhere else about them, so I'm not sure, once again, what's the truth and what's not. But it says there are reports of being followed and watched on the land, never feeling alone, especially along an area called the Creepy Trail, leading to the Clay Children graves. People have reported feeling pressure on their chest. Full-body apparitions, the little girl's the most active, and a 7-foot-tall native seen emerging from the pond, and a man walking near the road. Maybe the one near the road is the one that hit and run. I'm not sure. There's a little girl that appears on a tractor, shadows among the rides, and a shadow of a person seen on the Ferris wheel, which is the gentleman I mentioned earlier. There's sounds of children laughing and sounds of chanting, as if like Native Americans are chanting. People have been pushed. EVPs have been recorded. Visitors there during investigations often leave in the middle of the night when something happens. One guy took hours to drive to the park and left immediately after he claims he was pushed out of the ticket booth. The owner's mom lives on the property and says that things in her house get moved. I watched one documentary and the guy said he didn't feel like it was an evil place. The spirits were there, but they weren't anything that would harm anyone. So, that's kind of what, the ghosts are at Lake Shawnee. Are they bad? Are they good? I don't know. At Lake Shawnee, they offer daytime tours by appointment only. Also, yearly, they have what they call a dark carnival in October. They have a haunted house and tell ghost stories by a campfire. So if you're interested in it, now is the time to check it out. If you do go to visit Lake Shawnee, there are a lot of things in the area that you can visit while you're there. There's Winter Place Ski Resort. They have 27 trails, snowboard parks, 10 lanes of snow tubing, perfect snowmaking capabilities, and a restaurant and lounge. Also, Pipe Stem Resort State Park, where you can go hiking, take an aerial adventure, and visit their splash park and adventure lake. So all kinds of fun things to do in the summer there. There's also the Hatfield and McCoy Trail that goes through Mercer County, which is a huge ATV trail. I don't remember how many miles it goes for, but it's, I think, several hundred miles. So you can ride that if you have an ATV. There's several waterfalls you can visit. I saw lots of pictures of that, and there are tons of trails to hike. So it's definitely worth coming to the area for a long weekend and check out all the fun things. So this one's a lot shorter than the rest of them I've done lately. So let's just spend a little extra time talking about ghosts and hauntings. Do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe a place can be haunted? I do believe, because I've seen some things and heard some things that I just can't explain. I worked in a hospital basement, and if you don't think ghosts exist, maybe spend a little time in a hospital. I would be in a locked storeroom, and if you were in the back, you could hear the door open and shut and no one was around. Carts would move, things would fly off the shelves, you could hear people walking through the storeroom, and you would be the only one there. And it would sound like people would be digging through all just different boxes and stuff. It was just really creepy, especially at night. I also worked in another department in the basement, and when I was there, I would consistently see something, I guess what some people call shadow people. I worked at a table putting instruments together. On the other side of the room, I would consistently see this black streak going across the room in my peripheral vision. Almost every night, usually several times a night. I mentioned it one night, and a couple of the other people had seen it too. No idea what it was, but it was just weird. Like, you couldn't see it looking directly at it. You could only see it in your peripheral vision. And a couple of other coworkers had seen someone in a red and black flannel shirt standing watching them. But when they would look better at it, it would be gone. I never saw that. There were so many creepy things that I don't know what else it could be. I worked in those departments for several years, so there's no way someone was playing a big joke on someone for like 5 years. So that definitely kind of made me believe in the spirit world a little bit. So, and maybe there are some explanations, but none that I can think of. So one last story from me. And this one, I don't know if it was a dream or real. I thought for years it was a dream, and now I'm not so sure. When I was a kid, I had several dreams of a man dressed in old military clothing. Like, I thought it was Revolutionary War clothing, but I think maybe looking at stuff, it was more like Civil War clothing. Who knows? It's a kid's, what kids see, who knows? But he would come through the house on a horse. He was clearly a ghost, or at least not human in these dreams. He would always tell me that he was coming to look for a treasure. I wasn't really afraid of him, which I assumed it was a dream at the time, so it was never scary. When I was an adult, though, these people came to my house. The same one I grew up in that I had that dream in. They were treasure hunters. Like, seriously, treasure hunters. They said that General John Hunt Morgan and his Morgan Raiders had come through the area, which I had heard that before, that he'd been in the area. However, these guys said that they were supposed to have been buried treasure near the river, and they tracked it down to somewhere near our property. My dad was alive at the time and wouldn't let them do any searching, so who knows? We could have all been rich, maybe. But I always wondered, what if it wasn't a dream? What if that was the ghost of John Morgan talking to me? Probably just a kid's silly dream, but either way, that's a strange coincidence, and it definitely makes for a good story. So have you experienced anything that you would consider a ghost or haunting? If so, let me know. You can email me or contact me on Facebook. I'd really like to know your stories. So that's about it for today's episode. It's quite a bit shorter, but I'll make up for it in future episodes, I'm sure. As always, thanks for listening. If you listened to my podcast and you can, please like and rate it. If you're really awesome, share it with all your friends. You can follow me on social media under Poison Appalachia. I'm on TikTok and Threads, Instagram, YouTube, which I don't update that very often. I need to get better at that. And X, but I really don't use it either. And definitely Facebook. Facebook is what I'm on the most. You can also email me at poisonappalachia@gmail.com. So, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this one. And next week, we're gonna discover spooky railroad tunnels. So that will be a fun one. Have a good week. Bye.